Hey guys, Jim here again, bring you guys another fight prediction video, and today I will do a fight prediction video for the UFC 154 main event that features the returning welterweight champion Georges St-Pierre taking on the current interim welterweight champion Carlos Condit to crown the undisputed UFC welterweight champion of the world. I will give you guys a backstory on how this fight came together, a little background information about both fighters, along with a full detailed fight breakdown on how I see the two fighters matching up, along with how I see the fight unfolding. Plus, my official prediction on who I see coming out of this fight, the undisputed welterweight champion of the world. Not to mention, I will have a bonus fight prediction for you guys that sees the co-main event of UFC 154. It was Martin Kampmann versus Johny Hendricks. I won't go as deep as I am with the main event with this one, but just to give you guys an extra fight prediction. So without further ado, let's get this started. The backstory for this fight goes like this. Georges St-Pierre was scheduled to face off against Nick Diaz at the UFC 137, but when Nick failed to meet his promotional duties, Dana pulled him from the card and inserted Carlos Condit in to face George. But George was injured and had to be pulled from the main event slot against Condit, and Nick and BJ replaced those two as the main event, and the fight with Condit was moved to UFC 143. After Nick defeated BJ at UFC 137 and sent him to a mini retirement because he's facing Rory later in December, he basically called out Georges St-Pierre, taunting him enough to the point where he was agitated, angry, and told Dana he wants to hurt Nick and he wanted to fight Nick at the UFC 143 main event. So that left Condit out in the cold and later patched up with Josh Koscheck. So in that respect, we have the super fight ready to go between Nick Diaz and Georges St-Pierre back on, but as fate would have it, George was pulled from the card due to his ACL tear that needed surgery and a year-long rehabilitation. So, for that matter, Nick and Condit were paired up against each other for the interim welterweight championship of the world at UFC 143, which saw Condit outpoint and defeat the former Strikeforce welterweight champion via unanimous decision. So, I know what you guys are thinking. Nick won the fight. He basically made Condit back up. No! He didn't outstrike Condit, and he didn't do enough in the judge's eyes to win the fight because, in my opinion, his corner were probably smoking the weed he was smoking, because you do not beat a guy by taunting him and not throwing more strikes and basically just try backing him up without striking him more. Nick had to basically put pressure on Condit, batter him, and beat his ass and submit him to get the nod, because he was way at the bottom as far as the judges' scorecards were concerned later on in the fight. I mean, he probably won 2 rounds, but Condit beat him clearly by unanimous decision. I don't care what any of you say, he beat him. But that's neither here nor there. But Condit hasn't defended the interim welterweight championship at all. I mean, since George has been gone. So, for that matter, he's been given a lot of criticism. I mean, hell, the guy wants the big money fight. He was supposed to fight Diaz, but Diaz tested positive for marijuana metabolite, so that fight couldn't happen. So he basically waited for the big money fight, which is what we get to now. Because with Georges St-Pierre fully healed, motivated, he's going to fight Condit in UFC 154 November 17th at the Bell Center. Coming into this fight is GSP off a year-long layoff, because the last fight he had was against Jake Shields. He's going to bring that diverse striking, diverse skills set of everything that he has, and athleticism versus Condit's adaptability to adapt to almost any fighter and beat them. So the other thing is, George is looking to take back his title as the #1 welterweight in the world, and not to mention become the undisputed welterweight champion, because in the end there can be only one. Sorry that sounds cliche from Highlander, but it's the truth. Condit wants to take out George, spoil the party, and basically cement his legacy as the man who took GSP off his mantle and proclaim himself the true champion. The other thing about this fight, which is going to be so much fun, is that Greg Jackson is not going to be cornered either of these guys, so we can expect no wacky game plans. Faraz has got GSP, Mike Winklejohn has Condit, so we can expect a fun mixed martial arts scrap. Because there's going to be a man on a mission to reclaim his spot and redeem himself among his critics and his fans for not finishing fights and taking back his glory, versus a man who wants to prove that without a shadow of a doubt he is the man, that he is the true champion, and that he is the spoiler of all the big fights that could happen in the UFC, and he is the new standard of the welterweight division. That's what Condit wants to prove. But we'll have to see what happens. Now let's move on to the official breakdown of this fight, starting now. I see the fight like this. Condit has the advantage in the striking department. He throws more diverse striking, and he's more comfortable on the feet than George is for the most part. And he's got some, he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. George is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He has the wrestling advantage for sure, and the better overall skills. Definitely. But what's going to make a difference in this fight is going to be how well he's recovered from his injury. He says he's 100%, but he's been gone for so long. I mean, we don't really know if he's going to be able to do all the things that he normally does when he's in the octagon. That's the question mark coming into this fight. I mean, Condit's going to be fresh and ready coming into this fight. So we already know that. And like I said before, this is truly athleticism versus adaptability. That's what this fight is all about. I see the main thing for George, if he's on point, he's got to cover the distance, take Condit down at will, and basically defend Condit's submission attempts, because he's going to go for submission attempts. He's not like all these other guys. And Condit is one of these guys that doesn't stay down. Don Young Kim took him down and he got back up. So he's defending a submission attempt, and he has to pretty much, he's going to have to strike with Condit a bit too. I mean, he did beat Thiago Alves in the striking department. I mean, Condit is a much more diverse striker than Thiago Alves, so it's going to be interesting there. I mean, for Condit, it's basically make GSP pay for it every time he goes for a takedown. If he gets taken down, don't stay on the ground. Defend against GSP's ground and pound submission attempts and punches of his own, and get it back to where he wants it on the feet. The other exclamation point and question in this fight is going to be, can GSP overcome getting rocked? Because if Condit hits him, he's either going to get knocked out or he's going to get rocked. Because when Georges St-Pierre got rocked initially by Serra in their first fight, he did not recover. He just tapped. So we don't know how well he's going to survive. I mean, I will give the devil his due. He did survive the adversity that BJ put on him in the first fight when he bloodied him, and he survived the adversity when Drake Shields damn near poked his eye out of socket. So I have to give him his due there. But the question being is he going to be able to recover from that, you know, getting rocked? Condit, on the other hand, has shown the ability to get up from being rocked. When Jake Ellenberger fought him, he rocked Condit in that first round. Rocked him. He came back from the dead and went on to pound Jake Ellenberger en route to a unanimous decision. The same thing basically cannot be said for Georges St-Pierre. Where Condit's adaptability comes into play is that he adapts to almost any fighter as of late. It's not the same Carlos Condit we see all the time. When he fought Jake Ellenberger, he got rocked, he adapted, went on to beat Ellenberger. When he fought Hardy, he knocked out Hardy, he changed levels, he knocked him out. He fought Kim took him down, he got back up and beat Kim with a flying knee. When he fought Diaz, he went in there and he did what he had to do. He adjusted the right way so he wouldn't be in Nick Diaz's game and basically get battered like BJ did. He went in there, he threw cleaner strikes, he threw more strikes, he threw the leg kicks in to the shins and to the side of the legs, so he did what he had to do to win those fights. Georges St-Pierre, what he likes to do, he likes to beat everybody at their weakest part of their game. If it's a wrestler, he's going to beat them standing up. If it's a striker, he's going to beat them by grappling them to death and making them tired, like he did with BJ and like he did with Hardy, or like he did with Thiago Alves, although he did strike with Thiago Alves for a little bit, but mostly took him down repeatedly 10 times. So for St-Pierre, is basically, in my opinion, he basically has to cover the distance with Condit, strike with Condit with the jabs, keep him at bay. I say jab his eyes like he did Carlos, so he can't, not Carlos, but I'm sorry about that, Josh Koscheck. Punch like he did Koscheck with the jabs and everything, basically keep him off balance, because you don't want him to be able to see and be able to throw all these crazy things, and not to mention take his legs out so he can't have that spring to do his crazy leg kicks, and not to mention those flying knees, so he can't do any of that stuff. You want to take his eyesight out and you want to take his legs out, and you want to basically get him on the ground and pound him out a bit, and if you get a submission, get a submission. But likely it's probably for Georges St-Pierre a doctor stoppage or a unanimous decision. Condit, on the other hand, he's gonna have to rock Georges St-Pierre, because if George gets rocked, he's not gonna be coming back. That's the only serious flaw I see in George's game, is that when he gets rocked, he does not instantly recover, because it hasn't been seen yet. I can't say that when George gets rocked, he's going to get back up, take Condit down, and beat him down. No, we haven't seen that. What we've seen is when he gets rocked, he panics and he taps out. So, I expect in this fight a full MMA contest. I expect these guys to do everything. I expect Condit to get back up to his feet, strike George, you know, George going to be able to avoid getting the detrimental shots. He's going to take some shots from Condit, but if Condit gets in a heavy shot with his knees, or if he gets in a heavy shot with his hands, it could be lights out for George. But George can also has the ability to TKO somebody. He doesn't have one punch knockout, but he can do that with multiple strikes, and basically he can get a submission or a doctor stoppage. But Condit's key to victory is probably by knockout or somehow, some way, a submission. By no means necessary he's getting a unanimous decision. I don't see that happening. Ain't happening. Because you're not going to see the Carlos Condit fought Nick Diaz fight Georges St-Pierre. If that guy shows up, he's history against Georges St-Pierre. But overall, like I said, I expect a full MMA contest of these two guys displaying full skills. George is going to cover the distance. Condit is going to get taken down. Throw submission attempts. Try to get back up to his feet. George is going to try to keep him there. Try to ground and pound him and try to submit him. But it's going to be a full MMA contest. Whether it's going to be one-sided or not, we have to wait and see. Now, let's move on to the prediction of who I feel is going to come out of the Bell Center, the undisputed welterweight champion of the world. Now, my official prediction for this fight is that Georges St-Pierre defeats Carlos Condit by either unanimous decision, doctor stoppage, maybe by TKO or submission. With that being said, can Carlos win this fight? Yes, but the safe bet is Georges St-Pierre. But it depends on how St-Pierre has recovered from his injury and if the layoff is going to be a factor. But Georges St-Pierre all day, in my opinion, is going to beat Carlos Condit. But the stakes for this fight are high because if George defeats Condit, he can fight Anderson Silva in a super fight at either Cowboy Stadium or a stadium in Brazil, depending on what UFC wants to do. And if Nick Diaz wins his next fight, he could possibly challenge Georges St-Pierre in a super fight, because I know the fans and myself still want to see that fight come to fruition. So either way, the UFC is going to make big money. But if Condit wins, he spoils the party, and it's the best thing for the welterweight division, because then it gives guys like Finch, Koscheck, who have lost to St-Pierre, hope to fight the champion again. Not to mention, it gives guys like Kampmann and Hendricks, and whoever wins that fight gets to fight Condit immediately without having to worry about the champion facing anybody in a super fight. They don't have to worry about that. So, it's on one hand, if one guy wins, you get super fights and big money, as far as UFC is concerned. If Condit wins, the welterweight division gets a new lease on life because it's a new champion in these parts, and everybody who lost to St-Pierre can now hold their head up high and say, we can get our title shot. Get our title shot. We don't have to wait in the back of the line. We can basically get our shot. So, with that being said, this concludes my prediction for St-Pierre versus Condit. And now we're going to focus on the bonus prediction in this video between Martin Kampmann and Johny Hendricks, coming up right now. Hey guys, time for my bonus fight prediction. I'm going to make this short and sweet. So here it is. My fight prediction for UFC 154 co-main event between Martin Kampmann and Johny Hendricks, which is a #1 contenders bout that will determine the winner to face the winner of St-Pierre versus Condit, but that's contingent on who wins that fight. Because like I said earlier, if St-Pierre wins, there's factors preventing these two guys, whoever the winner is, from facing St-Pierre. Factors meaning Anderson Silva and Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz, depending on if he wins his next fight coming up next year. Likely against Koscheck, but that's nothing's been confirmed. But if Condit wins, the winner of Hendricks and Kampmann automatically gets a title shot at him. So if they're basically gonna be rooting for Condit to get the nod, because if he doesn't get the nod, they're gonna be in limbo for a little bit. They might have to fight somebody else like John Finch or Damian Maia, I'm guessing. But to the fight itself, it's an old school grappler versus striker type matchup, and a matchup of two former training partners in Martin Kampmann and Johny Hendricks. They used to train together at Extreme Couture. What Martin Kampmann has is great precision kickboxing ability. He has good submissions, because we've seen him choke people out with guillotines and arm triangle and stuff of that nature. And we've seen Hendricks, who is an NCAA wrestler, bring his great wrestling into the octagon, and not to mention his heavy hands, and he has some serious one-punch knockout power, which he displayed against his victory over John Finch. And he just showed his great wrestling and overall skills against Koscheck in a highly competitive technical scrap, where he won by a decision. Where Kampmann pulled off his impressive win streak over top contenders by, in the late round, the last round I mean to say, against Thiago Alves, when he was in trouble. Thiago Alves did the stupidest thing ever, because he had Kampmann beaten, and all he had to do was just keep on wearing on him and basically pouring it on hard. But he decided to go for a takedown, and Kampmann caught him in a guillotine choke and submitted. And in his latest fight, Kampmann knocked out rising star Jake Ellenberger. So, in that respect, both these men have proven themselves #1 contender worthy. But the question being is that, can Kampmann stick to his plans, keep it on the feet, get the submission if it's there, and or knockout, or get the decision, and stick to the game plan? Because by playing into his opponent's game, it becomes a living, breathing disaster for him. Because if you think about it, when he did that with Paul Daly, he got knocked out on the feet. When he did that against Jake Shield, he lost a decision. Because here's the thing, he had Jake beat. All he had to do was keep it on the feet. Why go down to Jake's strength, which is on the ground? That was stupid. And he lost the decision because of that. So, is Martin going to stick to the game plan and not play into Johnny's world and get into a slugfest with this man? Because if he gets in a slugfest with Johnny, and Johnny clips him, it's lights out, baby. But the question is, for Johnny, is can he deal with Martin's precision striking? Because he's an overall improving striker, but his striking is nowhere near Martin's level at all. So, he's mostly going to use his wrestling to wear him out, and use his heavy hands to pound him out, and probably get a knockout victory. But overall, I have to give the edge to Martin because of the experience and everything over a higher level of competition. So for that reason, I have to give Martin, in my official prediction, the victory over Hendricks. And he should likely go on to face the winner of Condit and St-Pierre. If Condit wins, If GSP wins, he has to wait in the wings for somebody else to fight in the interim. But if it's Condit, he automatically gets a shot at Condit. Because, I mean, I'm sure Condit wants the rematch, because the last time when he fought Kampmann, it was very close. So I'm pretty sure he wants to get that loss off his mind and get a clear victory over Kampmann. And Kampmann, he probably wants to say, well, you know, I beat you once, I'll beat you again, I take your belt. But literally, that's just how I see it. But, you know, it depends on what happens, because if St-Pierre wins, Kampmann might have to fight somebody interim. Whereas if Hendricks wins, it's the same thing for him. But if Hendricks loses, he's probably got to fight maybe 2 more fights to get back up in the heat, the number 1 contender spot. I mean, maybe a fight with Damian Maia or Koscheck, another rematch with him. That's just wishful thinking. Or maybe Rick Story. That's a better idea, because they're both coming off losses. And I'm sure Hendricks would want to get a win over Story, because Story beat him. So I'm sure he wants to redeem himself. But yeah, that's my official prediction for this fight. And this ends my fight prediction videos anyway for today. If you like the video, you know where to basically give me a thumbs up. And if you want more videos like this, subscribe above. Well, this has been great, guys. Have a great weekend. Don't forget to vote on who is going to lead this country. Is it going to be Barack Obama, or are you going to vote for Ramnesia? So let's keep that in mind, guys. Anyways, Jimmy signing off. See you guys next week with more fight predictions.